My eyes are waterfalls now as I speak about this,
Right.
and it's anger. No, I don't know how to deal with this anger in other ways than just crying. So before the show, one of the clowns, he just asked, how much do a brothel pay for one of these kids? To buy that kid and basically hold them as a slave. And this was 10 years ago, but the owner said about 5,000 rupees.
When we go back to Bombay, it also seems like a social systematic concern.
And that's the monster. I just want to... The monster is the system that we created.
Björn is a multifaceted creative individual. He's from the field of performing arts. He is a director. He's done screenplays. He's a theater persona. He's performed across the world.
And we went to perform for these girls in Kamathipura. And before the show, we were told the story of who these girls are. So their parents have been trafficked from Nepal when they were kids. And then these kids are born within the brothels. They don't know who their fathers are, obviously. And they grow up within the brothels and they hide under the bed when their mother have clients and they hear everything and they live a life that I can never understand. Like, I still remember when you see this woman in Kamathipura holding her baby on straight arms so the kid can see the show. That's the only image of God that I will ever need. Again, love is a state of existence. Sometimes you just know. Because art has got to be real. It's got to mean something. You have to, it's this cliche again, that you have to bring your soul with you on stage. Otherwise, it's something else. It's entertainment, which is good, also on another level. There's this saying among actors that you must, every time you get on a stage, you must leave a part of your soul on the stage. But when I went to India and performed for those kids, that became reality.
Did you ever feel that a character that you have played on the stage versus when you leave that stage and go back and you realize that the character is going with you and continuing to exist?
For me, characters derivates from actions and actions derivates from meetings. So my clown character, so to speak, the Frog King, I mean, he easily gets angry and then he doesn't even have a language. He just...
Why isn't the world not doing anything about this? Since you have been there and experienced it, how can anybody even be in that space to help in any way?
I'm gonna reveal a secret now.
The Creative Spark Plug is a black book of creative journeys. We actually document lives of individuals who are creatively inclined, who are undergoing their own creative process, or are just curious about something creative. They're dealing with creativity at an everyday level. And we document it for the ones who are trying to get an insight into what a creative life looks like, or they feel stuck in their own lives about a certain creative process that they themselves are undergoing and want insights. Where do they go to? They go to our black book, right? So that's the purpose of us creating this black book of creative journeys. Today we are talking with Björn Dahlman. Did I get the pronunciation right?
That's very good, actually.
Right, thanks. Björn is a multifaceted creative individual. He's from the field of performing arts and to say is compromising in some sense of everything that he does. I will actually spell out the one aspect that I'm most curious about, which is the fact that this is the first time and he's the only person I know who's a professional clown. Like,
Same here.
Right? Going back all the way to the days that I used to read Shakespeare in school as a curriculum, as a syllabus. There was a jester, but that was a part of my imagination. I never saw a jester, right? Until I met Björn. That he is absolutely somebody like me, but his profession is to be a jester. Would that be right? The jester is who you are in today.
I guess in a way that's very accurate. I guess we'll talk more about this later, but different words for clown and what is a clown and what is a payaso, what is a jester. But short answer, yes.
Perfect. He is a director. He's done screenplays. He's a theater persona. He's performed across the world, and he'll tell us where all he's done what in the show. He's essentially from the field of performing arts. And how do I know him? A very dear friend of mine is a very dear friend of his. So we are very dear friends. So that's how friendship works, I guess. It's a little different from enemy's enemy is a friend, right? Go figure that out. But over to you, Björn.
I'm very confused, but let's just say we're friends. It went
Yes,
fast.
you're friends.
Yeah.
Bjorn, if you can just give us a little background about where you started, how you started, where you're from, and why the profession of a clown.
Sure, I'll do my level best. So ever since I was a kid, I loved being on stage. I loved telling stories in different ways. So I guess at some point these two merged, and that's where I felt I wanted to become an actor. So that's one starting point. I truly believe that starting point is a very interesting concept. It's like how mushroom grows, right? When you have like a, what do you call it, a flock of mushrooms,
Yeah.
they're all interconnected underground, but they kind of pop up at different places and then connect. So it's like several starting points that were connected before there was a physical connection. It's very fascinating. Another starting point is I was 9 years old. I watched a Michael Jackson concert on TV and I was mind blown. It was the Dangerous Tour. I was mind blown. And from that day, I always had this thing in mind that I will be on stage. I wanted to become Michael Jackson when I was a kid. It didn't take me long to realize that I was not that singer. I was not. That's another story. But this whole idea of experiencing, even though it was through television, experience the magic of what it can be being on stage and the connection between the stage and the audience. Like it's almost. It is. I mean, old rituals with masks and everything. They work with this magic. So understanding that magic and how it can emphasize the art of storytelling, that was one starting point. So for many years, it was all about being an actor. And then in my early 20s, there was this theater company in Sweden. They were called 1, 2, 3 Stunk. It was a clown company. They did a very revolutionary thing about clowning. They did clowning for grown-ups. What they did was that they were like, what if we are 3 clowns who tries to put up a Shakespeare play? But we're clowns, so things will happen. And I saw them perform, and again, it completely blew my mind. It was like nothing I ever experienced before. It was this feeling that you're in the audience and you are not safe. You're 100% safe, but you're not safe. Anything can happen on the stage. Anything can happen between the stage and the audience. And that, you're moved into a world where there's a different set of rules. To me, that was pure magic. And it so happened that, one of my very best friends in life, who also became an older brother in the field of art, a Swedish actor, his name is Johannes Vanselov. He just so happened to get to do his internship with that company. So he gave me some inside information about what is it like working with clowning. He even came to the school I attended at the time to give a workshop. So that was my first introduction. I guess I was 22, 23. And since that day, I really wanted to become a clown. And I heard about this organization called Clowns Without Borders, which went to wherever there were children who needed the laughter. Refugee camps, hospitals, orphanages. So I just called them and say, can I go with you? Can I work with you? And they say, okay, what, we don't have the resources to employ actors to develop shows. We just pick artists who already have a number. So what can you do? And I remember saying on the phone, I just learned Hamlet's speech. I can do to be or not to be. And they were like, why should we take that to a refugee camp? So I had this dream for 7-8 years to travel with Clowns Without Borders. Parallel to that, again, there's always multiple starting points, right? I went to this theater school in Sweden called Vårdingeby, and I met this guy, a guy from Mumbai named Rupesh Tillu. He was my classmate.
And he was your classmate. How?
I got to know him at that school, and then years passed by, and then he contacted me several years later. It turned out that he had studied to become a clown. He was working with Clowns Without Borders, and he was doing a master in physical theater in Sweden, and he was doing his master thesis, which was create a play. And he asked me to write the script and direct him. It turned out that he wanted to talk about environmental refugees using clowning. So I started directing him in a clown show, not knowing anything about clowning, but he did, so it was fine. And we started talking about clowning together, and I told him I so badly want to travel with Clowns Without Borders. And he said, at some point, let's create a show. Let's maybe go to India, who knows? And then so this show that we created, the one that I directed, it was called Ragula Bugla. It's a make-up name. It's the name of an island that sinks in the ocean. So the story is, and this is all Rupesh's crazy mind, everybody have a country but no passport. What if you have a passport with no country? So that was the premise for the show. And the show, it won a few awards at fringe festivals, and Rupesh had some kind of a contact with someone working in UNESCO in USA, and he pulled some strings and worked his magic. So we went on a tour to USA with Ragula Bugla. And he also brought his clown solo for kids to, perform it at libraries, schools, whatever. Last day of the tour, I was sleeping. He was supposed to go on his own to perform his show. And he just, shakes me. He goes, wake up, wake up. At that time, he couldn't pronounce my name, Björn. He said, Björn, wake up, wake up, wake up. Did you ever do clowning? And I was like, I'm sleeping. Yeah, I did a workshop 6 years ago. Why? He was like, get in the car in 30 minutes. You're in the show today. I was like, what? He was just, find yourself a clown costume, and disappeared. Now, we stayed in the house owned by this guy who worked at UNESCO Center for Peace. We were alone in that house, and I was supposed to find myself a clown costume. But it's an office guy. And I was looking around the house. I peeked into the guy's bedroom. I saw a huge picture of this guy having lunch with Michelle and Barack Obama. And I saw that picture and I went, Rupesh, I don't think this guy has a clown costume. So Rupesh, he gave me, so we used flippers in our Ragula Bugla show.
Yeah. Green ones.
Not green ones, they were blue. Yes. Flippers for that show, and he also had like a crown for his other show. So he gave me the flippers and the crown, and he said, you are the Frog King. Get in the car. And that's the birth of Frog King, which I now have performed more than 800 times.
So it was just created like that.
Yes, like that. And he was so funny. He said, so he had like 30 minutes program already. And he said, he was playing with a chair. So he said, your job is to place the chair on the stage. Your character enters, place the chair, get out. That's all you have to do. If the audience are laughing, stay. Your goal is to stay for 1 minute. And I went there and I stumbled on my feet. Like I didn't plan that. They were laughing. I started playing with that. Someone took a picture. I started posing for the camera and I was just having fun. I was having the adrenaline rush of my life. I checked the clock. It has been 10 minutes and I hear Rupesh going, get off the stage. It's me now. So that was still one of the most memorable stage memories I ever had. That's one of the beginnings. I'll tell you later why I decided to stay in this field, but yeah.
I wanted to take you back again.
Yes.
To Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Michael Jackson happened while you were 9.
Yeah.
Barack Obama happened while you were in your 30s.
Let me do some. Yeah, I think I was 29 when that happened.
I was almost there.
Yes, yeah. You're very good.
Yeah, so 29. In between, you did a course and you did your schooling as well.
Mm.
I'm just putting the chronology.
I'm just confused by that. Yeah, so I did. I mean, the way in Sweden to become an actor, basically, to get into the field, you have to attend the National Theatre Academy.
Got it.
If you, like, while waiting to get into that, you can attend other schools that doesn't have the same status.
Right.
So I attended 3 of those schools, and I also formed my own theater company. I finally got into the Theatre Academy, not their bachelor program, their master program.
Wow.
So I applied on like real life experience merits.
Right.
So, but I went for those auditions 20 times.
But is that, sorry,
Go for it.
is that a mandate that you have to go through a theater program? Or because I don't know, in our country, if we really need to do something to be something.
Yeah.
So
And most of the countries is that it's not like this one fixed school you have to attend, like in London, New York, whatever. There are several schools with a good reputation. There's no official, like, this is mandatory. And there are many, many actors in Sweden who went other ways. And it's opening up also. The past, say, 10 years, it's been more open to people who went other ways. But it's still like, because it's also like, if you go to that school for 3 years, that means you have 3 years where you do productions in the school, all the established directors go and watch you. So you kind of get into the circle.
And the population there is a benefit because it's smaller.
Exactly.
They'll remember.
It's yeah. And I mean, Sweden is a tiny country, and this is what happens in all small circles, right?
Like, I need to wear my hair upside down to get noticed. And remember,
I'm very sure that you'd get noticed anyway. Yeah.
Should not be that big a fight, is what I'm assuming.
I guess so.
But I mean, this is a fascinating story. There are too many milestones in some sense, and they're great.
Yeah.
9, you saw Michael Jackson do the Dangerous Show.
Yeah.
That was one of your inspirations.
Yeah.
And at some point of time in your teens, you attended different schools.
Late teens, yeah.
Late teens, right? And you were schooling at the same time as well. The regular, or is it different in Sweden?
It's such a messy story. Here's the thing. I was a smart kid when I was in school.
Very obvious.
Well, thank you. I don't know what. No, so the thing is that I, like, all my teachers were like, oh, you have to study like natural science, social science, go to one of the real programs. I just wanted to study theater. So for high school, I actually picked social science. And I spent 3 years thinking I should have done theater. So when I graduated from high school, I was 18 in June. So I decided, no, I want to redo this. So in August, I just took the bike to the theater high school in the city. I just walked into the classroom and said, can I stay here for 1 year? And just, I'll stay in this very classroom. I'll attend all the theater classes. You don't have to give me a grade. You don't have to take attendance. And those amazing teachers, today this would not be able to happen in Sweden, but those amazing teachers, they were like, yeah, why not?
Wow.
So for 2 months, I was basically hiding in that black box doing theater. And then this, I don't know what you call it in English, but like someone working at that school just visited one of the classes and was like, who are you? I was like, ignore me. She said, this is probably legal. But she was an angel. She managed to arrange it so that I was assigned for that school as a teacher's assistant. So I could even get some salary to be there for 1 year.
Nice.
So I have 2 high schools, high school educations.
Right.
After that, I got paid for one even. So that was weird. And after that, I studied literature a couple of years at the university, trying to get into theater schools. Then I got into theater schools, like those, not the official bachelor program. And
I have a question to ask. The other interface I have with clowns is as a kid.
Yeah.
When I used to go to watch a circus.
Yeah.
Those are the days that there used to be circuses, and we used to go there once a year.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
It wasn't there around for a very long time. And now, of late, they've been making a comeback. But yeah.
As a kid, I used to go, my father used to take me for this Sunday afternoon. There was a circus show. And there were these clowns there as well. I remember discussing these clowns because they were, of course, funny.
Yeah.
And the point is that these clowns spoke not only with me as a child, but also spoke to my father, who was the father of a child.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Right. So I'm curious about that because I think that's a lot of sensibility.
Yeah.
When you said social sciences, you were studying the science of how society works or the structures that we have created to give it some semblance of order, probably. I don't know if I'm getting overtly dramatic about it, but if that is what you studied and then you went into acting, did it throw light on what you were doing? Did it influence you in some way?
I really think it did.
Right.
And I'm very happy that I choose this path because, I mean, you have to understand the world you live in. And I was 17 years old when I read the Bible. Right. We were talking about before the show that Sweden is a very secularized country and everything. But I wanted to understand. I should also say, when I was in high school, I was determined that I would become a psychologist. This acting thing was a hobby. Even when I did this 1 year of only acting, this was me taking a break from studies before entering the program as a psychologist in my head. And then I just realized this year has to go on, and now it's been 22 years. But yeah, I think you need to understand the world you live in. And there's this beautiful quotation from this play/movie Amadeus, Peter Schaeffer. Salieri says, "Art was the only thing that made life understandable for me." And I think it's so beautifully put. It's the same. I love doing art. I'm having fun doing art, but I also realize I need it to understand life, to understand myself. And so to me, it's interlinked.
May I inquire more into this?
Please.
So there are two aspects that come to my mind. One is you saying that art is something that kind of nourishes you for you to be on stage.
Yeah.
Not only as a clown, I'm assuming. You're talking about all the things that you do on stage.
Yes.
Right? That's one aspect of it. So while you also give back to it. In some sense, it's a symbiotic relationship.
It's. Right? I think you're hitting the head of the nail now. This is exactly what it's all about. Because I want to talk more about this, what's going on when we do the Clowns Without Borders show.
Right.
You go beyond the concept of giving and taking.
Right. Can you go free with that? There's something that's coming to your heart, but I see it's not coming out.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So let me start with this concept of giving and taking.
Right.
So you were talking about giving and at the same time receiving. And I really believe that this is what life is. I mean, the word give and take, they didn't appear in the Big Bang. It's not God created the words give and take. This is concepts that we have invented, words we have invented to understand, but also, how to say, sort out our world, to be able to speak about it. But I really believe that art is a way to transcend the concept of give and take. There is this Swedish, I don't know what it is, his name is Per Johansson, is some kind of professor, I think. He has a podcast, and at one point he said, I'm trying to remember this quote now. He was talking about love, and he said, love is not a feeling, it's a state of existence. And I thought that was so brilliantly put. And I think it's exactly the same thing when you're doing art. So here's the story of Clowns Without Borders, that in 2012, me and Rupert went to Mumbai to do a tour with Clowns Without Borders. So we had this his character Popo and my character the Frog King, which was weirdly born in the USA, and we also had a Danish musician Kim Menser and a Finnish clown Janna Havisto. And we were like, we didn't know anything. Rupert had arranged everything, so we were aiming to perform in schools with kids below the poverty line, and we did. But when we were in India, we were contacted by a lot of organizations, and we were performing for like homeless kids living under those highways and all kind of orphanages, hospitals, all kind of places. And we also went to some kind of a daycare center in Kamathipura, which is the red light district of Mumbai. And we performed for those kids. They were like 4 or 5 years old, all girls. And so the thing with these kids is that, I'll tell you what state of mind I was in. We had already toured for like 2 weeks and it had been extremely intense. We had all been sick, all these things. So there were no defenses, right? And I realized performing for these kids, it took me to a place where I've never, ever been as an artist before. Like, you get on stage and you want to give everything. You want to squeeze out every ounce of energy. There's this saying among actors that every time you get on a stage, you must leave a part of your soul on the stage. But when I went to India and performed for those kids, that became reality. Like, I so badly wanted to give everything I ever had. Like, it was on a whole new level. I accessed sources of energy that I did not know that I had. Which was, of course, exhausting, but also like I gave everything I had and I received something that I never thought I would receive. So again, this was beyond giving and taking, like they mash up. It's like the concept of bodhisattva, right? That when you give love to the world, that's also when you receive love. I mean, that's the basic concept. Anyway, so that's where I was in a state of mind, and we went to perform for these girls in Kamathipura. And before the show, we were told the story of who these girls are. So most of them, so their parents have been trafficked from Nepal when they were kids, and then these kids are born within the brothels. They don't know who their fathers are, obviously. And they grow up within the brothels and they hide under the bed when their mother have clients, and they hear everything, and this always makes me very emotional, but they live a life that I can never understand. I will never understand how they survive. And they don't know the local language, because that's why those pimps want women from Nepal, because they don't know the local language. So then they can't run away. So these kids also grew up without knowing the local language. But this daycare center, who is run by the most amazing people on this planet, we heard stories about kids who go to this daycare center, they learn the language, they learn mathematics, and they grew up and they get top jobs. And they come back and they help their mothers get out of there. And so I remember before the show, one of the clowns, the Danish musician, he just asked, like, how much do a brothel pay for one of these kids, to buy that kid and basically hold them as a slave? And this was 10 years ago, but the owner said about 5,000 rupees. And I remember I just ran into the toilet and I was crying and I was crying. I was crying so much that I had my clown makeup on. The clown makeup was just pouring down my face, because just one day ago, I had bought a pair of jeans for 5,000 rupees. I mean, it's beyond understanding. But and I'll tell you, after this day, actually, I went home to Spatika that evening. I was crying for hours. I sat in that auto for 2 hours crying the whole way. The guy was looking at me like, what the hell is going on? I came home to Spatika. I was crying. I cried every single day for the coming 3 months. But still, we went up there, we did the show, and it was like you look the kids in the eyes and nothing else exists. Their history, their future, it doesn't exist. It's just you in that magic moment. And this is where the red nose comes in. I mean, the red nose is a mask. And, in old shaman rituals, you use the mask to transfer you and the audience to a different world. And I honestly believe this is what happened. This is what happens. So, you travel into this other world and you just give everything and you laugh together. And 12 years have passed. I still remember their faces. Here comes the magic. The next year we return. We play for those kids again. Many of these kids, they remember the show exactly. And this time we also had involved several Indian artists. So the show was a bit different. And some of these kids were like, oh, but you didn't do this. And last year you did this. And, they remembered everything. Next year, I wasn't in that tour, but they went again to perform for these kids. The 4th year, I was there again. And we were told that this year we will also perform for their mothers. Because these kids have said, in talks that we've never ever seen our mothers laugh. We want to experience that. So this center, they bribed the brothels so that the mothers could get 2 hours off, and the mothers came to see the show with their kids. And I mean, these are women who say that they can't remember the last time they laughed. They don't remember laughing in their whole life. Some of them, they were rolling on the floor laughing. And those kids, okay, so the 5th year we came back, and we were told that this time you will perform again for the kids and the mothers, but the kids will also perform because the kids have seen the clowns making the mothers laugh. So now they want to become clowns. And these are kids, kids play what they see, right? These are kids, 5-year-old kids who play rape scenes. They act out rape scenes together. Now these kids, now these kids are playing clowns instead. And they perform for their mothers. And, when I saw that show, and these kids were really talented and they had support from one of the local artists and all, I can't remember crying that much in my entire life. This was 2016, 17, I think. That ensemble kept on working together, creating more shows. They toured Sweden. They toured Poland. One of them has been invited to Germany to direct. During the pandemic, they performed for more than 30,000 kids. And I mean, Rupesh Tillu has done an amazing job organizing this together with all of his amazing artists. I just had the privilege to be a tiny part of it, standing in a corner watching, putting on my flippers, falling on my ass. But I mean, I'm not religious. I'm Swedish. But this is the closest to a religious experience I ever been. Like, I still remember when you see these women in Kamathipura, and they're tiny, and many of them have like different diseases, different drugs, everything. Seeing this tiny woman holding her baby on straight arms so the kid can see the show. That's the only image of God that I will ever need. Again, love is a state of existence. Sometimes you just know. So after all this experience, I mean, I never asked myself, is this something that maybe I should do more of? It's like, I just knew that this is probably the core of my life right now. And then many different things happened, which led me to understand that I can actually initiate this in China as well. That's why I moved to China, and we're working on it. But yeah, so there are different levels of becoming a clown. It's like, put the red nose, this is fun, and okay, this is the core of everything.
That was a very, very touching story, very emotional. I think the first time also when I heard about this while learning about you, it was emotional for me as well, and I had goosebumps. And I cannot fathom the fact that such a world exists even today. How do you separate between the character that you're playing and the effect that it has on you when you're not playing the character? So what kind of effect does it have on you, or not just you, but in to the person who's performing?
First, oh my God, there's so much to answer here. I'm going to rewind a little bit. So it's very true what you say, that I came there to give, but I felt I received. Many people say that, you give so much. I never experienced that. And especially with the art of clowning, because how it works. Oh, there is so much I want to comment on. You mentioned the circus. So traditionally, you separate circus clowns from theater clowns. This is just me being nerdy. But I don't know much about circus clown. That's my point. In the style that I'm doing, the theater clown, which derivates from the old Commedia dell'arte Italy, all that. Everything, this is my interpretation, but everything is based on audience interaction. I do something and I look at you and I share it with you. If you don't laugh, if you don't think that's interesting, I do something else. If you laugh, I will repeat what I'm doing. And I look at you and you like that. And maybe I do it a third time, maybe for you. And you laugh. And then maybe I say, did you laugh together? So I kind of connect you together, and then I try to open up the room, and this one joke, I try to involve everyone in the audience. So you give the feeling that this is not me performing for you, this is us playing together. And that's why I love this style. I love to watch it as an audience because I'm there. But also I love to do it, especially for these kind of kids that all you want to do is empower them. You want to create this magic room that for 30 minutes, they're the most important people in the world. And then it's a performance, but it's also a genuine meeting. So I don't want to separate what's happening in that room from my life. It's like, now I'm talking to you, we look at each other in the eyes, I'm saying things, I see your reaction. It's a meeting. I don't want to step out of this room and say, oh, this guy Rajesh, he doesn't exist to me anymore, right? When you've met kids, I know that I have performed for kids who are not around anymore. Kids, like we went to hospitals, kids who were born with HIV. And also I know I performed for kids in 2015 when all these people came over the Mediterranean and we went to refugee camps in Greece. I know that statistically a few of those children are now in the Mediterranean. And this is going to sound so woo-woo, but I can feel them. I carry them with me. Even if that's just a thought in my head, they are with me on stage. And I want them to be. Because art has got to be, it's got to be real. It's got to mean something. You have to, it's this cliche again, that you have to bring your soul with you on stage. Otherwise, it's something else. It's entertainment, which is good, also on another level. Did that answer your question? I forgot where you landed.
So I was just coming back to that and
Thank you.
touch back on that. Did you ever feel that a character that you have played on the stage versus when you leave that stage and go back and you realize that the character is going with you and continuing to exist and you're not able to leave the character beyond the boundaries of the stage?
Oh, yes, that was the question. So this is how I am trained. There are different schools, but for me, characters derivates from actions, and actions derivates from meetings. So my clown character, so to speak, the Frog King, he exists only in the meeting with an audience. But then he's also, I'm going to reveal a secret now, he's everything that I am, but that I'm hiding. He is vain. He is very easily, can't find a word, insulted. Yeah, absolutely. And he has this makeup. He's very much Donald Duck in one sense. He easily gets angry, and then he doesn't even have a language. He just and he's super vain. He loves to pose. He even asks the audience, "Am I beautiful? Am I beautiful?" So he is everything that I am, but that I want to hide. So he's inside me, and I'm inside him, in a way that it doesn't really happen the same way. Like if I get a script, I read the script, I'm like, okay, what is this character doing? What does these actions do with me? And then I put myself in that vessel. Of course, the clown character only comes from me and what I bring to the meeting. So, but I don't speak like the Frog King in my daily life. Like it's not that concrete.
I'm going to double click on this a bit. You cannot ask me back questions after this, only in break times or after a couple of drinks. But what if my kicks about being on the stage?
Who?
My own kick, my own excitement about being on the stage has been living it's life, which I otherwise don't get to, right? So my first act on the stage was when I was an artist called Bernard. And I remember, I think I was about 8, 9 kind of thing. Similar age when you encountered Michael Jackson. The excitement of trying to fathom what an artist in a king's court would be was very exciting, right? So it's like being an alibi to parts of us that may not exist or doesn't exist or are parts of us, but in a functional world, we have decided to either close it up or lock it up, or we don't find that part relevant enough. I don't know, I'm just using words. I'm sure there are many more options there. So the parts that you play, like including the Frog King, which is, as I derive from what you just said, a part of you that has those aspects of you which you probably tame and keep. Is there a certain part that you still haven't played on stage? And which essentially brings me back to the question, are you dealing with it? It's a little bit of a blunt question.
Oh, but it's a very interesting one. So I know a lot of actors who have the same story as you, that they were attracted to theater, or, even these cosplays, all these things, because they wanted that experience. That was never a big thing to me. I mean, it is on one level, of course, but this idea of like, I want to live someone else's life, that was just never a thing for me. And same thing, I was never interested in this role plays or cosplays that many of my colleagues are. There are parts of me, of course, that I have not yet explored a lot on stage. I mean, I get to hear that I have a teddy bear persona. I have these looks. I know I have a soft voice. I get casted a lot for like shows for children and the nice guy. So I haven't done much of this like very aggressive man, this, the American, the literature, angry young man kind of things. That's one thing I haven't done much. I don't feel a need to do that as an actor. We could do another podcast episode about, I mean, how I deal with those things, those aspects of myself. Yeah. But yes, absolutely. I did Frankenstein. I adapted Frankenstein into a solo play, and it actually told the story about Kamathipura, because that's where I faced what I would like to call evil. But that wasn't so much dealing with about my own anger and my own. So yeah, no, actually, no. I know that actors are supposed to say, "Oh, this is my dream character. I want to do this." And once, I don't have that as for now. I'm coming back to this play, Amadeus. The Salieri character, to me, he resembles my biggest fear in life. To be the English word. He's not. He wish he's the genius that Mozart is, but he realizes he's not. And in one sense, that is my big inferior complex in life. My biggest fear, to be just 6 out of 10, live a 6 out of 10 kind of life, be a 6 out of 10 kind of guy. This is a big thing to me. Can't believe I'm saying this on a podcast, but so if I have one character that at some point in my life I want to do, then I guess it would be Salieri, because it terrifies me. It really does.
I have a couple of things to ask. A little more on the serious note, that you're our first guest on the podcast and probably the only one we'd ever come across so far. And in my lifetime, after the time when I moved beyond the age of going to circus and seeing clowns, you're the first professional clown I've come across. Couple of things I just wanted to know more on the serious note of being a professional clown. Is that, like you also mentioned about Clowns Without Borders, so is clowning a profession world over, or was this something that happened to you?
Okay, first thing is, how do you even define profession? If the definition is, are you able to make money from it? Well, it's the same thing, I think, for all artists. You have to be super good, and you have to, like, in my entire life, I always worked between 50 and 80 hours per week. And I know in some countries that's not a lot. In Sweden, that's a lot. We're obsessed with this 40 hours working week, 6 weeks of vacation, blah, 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 blah. It's called white privilege, honestly. But you have to work really hard. You have to be lucky. You have to be smart. You have to promote yourself. You have to do all the boring paperwork to get an income from your art, whatever it is. But I mean, clowns, they pop up in every culture. To me, I'm very into Jung, the psychologist, and you talk about like, I mean, what you were talking about in one sense was the shadow, right? I believe the clown is an archetype. You mentioned the jester, which is, to me, it's the political aspect of the clown. The fool who can say everything because he's the fool, or she. But the jester or the trickster, this archetype, the one that just messes things up, appears in like every culture. We have a saying in Clowns Without Borders that goes, disturb the comfort and comfort the disturb. And that, to me, that's a natural force, and it materializes into characters in every tradition where stories are told. So yeah, clowns, I think they're global. And when there are clowns, there will certainly be clowns who manage to turn it into a profession, for sure.
Okay, because it's taken me, about 30 odd years to actually meet a clown. So, okay, that's
maybe you met some undercover clowns.
Is there like a formal school or something, an organization that teaches you about clowning?
Yeah.
That's a word that I can use.
That is, I love that word, actually. I love that you make it a verb. That's the word I use. Because it's not really acting, it's something else. But there are a lot of schools around the world. I never attended a specific school. Like there was, when I did my master program at what was then called Stockholm Academy of Dramatic Arts, we had like a block with the school's clown teacher. But yeah, there are lots and lots of schools all over the world.
And do you go to classroom with in a clown's uniform?
It happens. I mean, the classrooms are usually black boxes, right? But yeah, of course.
Okay. So, did you study theater first or clowning first?
I studied theater. I studied to become an actor. Nowadays, I even called it text actor, using that Chinese term, because they separate text actors from opera actors. So that was, I wanted to do Strindberg. I wanted to do Shakespeare. That was how it started. And then clowning came as an add-on. So in Sweden, in the curriculum for the actors, you have to study clowning, not to become a clown, but because it works so much with improvisation and presence especially, like listening to each other. So you study this form as a tool.
And so you gradually moved from learning theater artist, and then you became a clown, did clowning, or did you do stand-up comedy first?
Oh no, stand-up comedy, that came later. That's another story, with only 2 or 3 beginnings. But no, clown came much later than acting, but I never quit acting. I don't do it much like right now because I'm in China and my Chinese is not good enough to do Chinese text-based theater, but I never quit acting. I still hope I get to do my Frankenstein show again. I still want to, that was my first love.
I mean, I heard another podcast of yours, and you were talking about the different types of clowning. We had Charlie Chaplin, we had Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
We've had The Mask. So all of these are very varied and different forms of clowning, maybe? I don't know.
I guess you could say. I mean, Charlie Chaplin, absolutely a lot of clowning there. I mean, okay, I might be 100% wrong about this, but so in the Commedia dell'arte tradition, you have all these fixed characters, including the Harlequin. Someone told me that Charlie Chaplin basically developed that Arlecchino character into his... I might be wrong about this, though. Yeah, you take a note. Anyway, but there's definitely clowning there. And of course, Mr. Bean. I mean, to me, Mr. Bean is first an incredible mime. And there's a lot of relationship, like mime and pantomime and clowning, both historically and geographically, and also content-wise, they go very much hand in hand. But yeah, of course, there are different kinds depending on what tradition you work in and what skill set you have. But I think it's also important in general when you talk about different kinds. This actually goes for martial arts as well. There's a lot of like, what is kung fu and what is karate and what is tai chi and what is. It doesn't work like that in reality. You can talk about it as different sources, but then there are also the practitioners who pick from everywhere. Like I used to say that I'm very much a theater clown and not a circus clown. But of course, I worked with a lot of circus artists. I steal as many of their tricks as I ever can. So to me, it's more interesting. Like one thing is to wear a mask or a red nose or not. That takes you into different worlds. And to be a jester who use your position as the fool to make political comments or not. But then again, even if I'm not a jester, even if I'm just falling on my ass, it's still the same core. I mean, I fall on my ass, I share with the audience, ooh, that was embarrassing, and everyone laugh. Because I shared something that is a taboo, which is exactly the same thing as the jester does. So
we have the jester, we have the clown, we have the mime. So like this, how many forms are of visual clowning are there?
honestly, I don't know. And also the terms that I'm using here, jester, clown, payasos, mime, I'm not sure that, if you had another person sitting here, that person would probably not use the same terminology. So this is just my way of creating a map. So ChatGPT would give better answers than I do.
No, you want more personalized answers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we understand that clowning is a very serious business, but do you have trouble people taking you seriously?
Oh my God. I mean, apart from this, hey, get a real job dimension, and also, so I'm single and I hang out on a lot of dating sites, and the number of times that I've been unmatched when I say I'm a professional clown, I don't even want to think about it. And of course, in one way, that's how it should be. I mean, if it wasn't silly, it wouldn't be clowning.
I was just about to actually pick on that.
Yeah.
That it works for you when they unmatch. It's a very dark joke, but it's a joke nevertheless.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I laugh. There have been times when I felt really sad about it because it's also an aspect, but this is not so much being a clown, more being an actor. Like when I was in my early 20s and I started getting my first gigs, so I started to say, okay, I'm a full-time actor. But oh my God, did I struggle to pay my rent every month. And this was the time where all my friends graduated from university, starting to get their first jobs, move to Stockholm and go to these pricey cafes. And I just couldn't afford to go to those cafes. All these things. There were many, many years where I felt horrible because, you are the guy who doesn't have money. And then all of a sudden your friends start to work as whatever, doctors, lawyers, everything. So yeah, that was very difficult to deal with. Again, this happened before clowning came on board. And I mean, now I can look back, the experiences that I had, like the people I got to meet, this amazing woman running this, it's called Up and Up, this organization in Kamathipura. I went to Nigeria. I met these youngsters who did volunteer work in the refugee camps, taking care of those kids. I mean, when I was a kid, my highest dream was to meet Batman. And now I hang out with superheroes. I mean, that's not even a joke, but that means more. Like we did shows in Nigeria and we were performing for former child soldiers, men in their 20s, all muscles. And we were like, oh my God, our show is for 5-year-old kids. They're going to hate us. But those guys, they were rolling on the sand. I mean, this was the Sahara Desert, right? They were rolling in the sand laughing. And you look out on hundreds of guys just laughing like crazy. And you're like, when you're a child soldier, you experience things that I don't even want to put words on them. And to see those, not one, not two, 50 of them, transforming into the children they were never allowed to be in front of our own eyes. There is no price to that. It's priceless. You give me 1 million Swedish crowns and I say I'm not in exchange for that experience, I would not take it. So now I forgot your question again.
That's good. Just a few more and then we'll move on to Bashob's side of the thing. So how do you just generally make money?
Yeah. So I'm not going to say every month, but for sure every season there's a new solution. This season I live in Shanghai and I think I have enough gigs planned. I have enough gigs lined up for being able to, make a living and even afford to be here in India. Obviously, I'm not making any money while I'm here, but I could afford to make this journey to India. So that spring is sold. And then I'm going back to Sweden to direct 2 plays. So summer is covered, and then I don't know about the autumn. So I'm 42 years old, but I still live the life that I lived when I was 25. Yeah,
some sense.
Yeah.
So you've done theater, you do clowning, you would also a stand-up comedian.
Yes.
Now, did each one help the other? Are they like complementing a skill or what should I call it? A talent?
100%. And I write scripts, I direct, but I mean, clowning, it is and it's not, but to me it is a sort of acting. I use the same toolbox. What's my will in each scene and what's the graph and what's the, When I started doing stand-up, so I really, for 9 years, I considered it only a hobby. Like there was even this point quite early actually where I felt I might do this professionally and I choose not to. I didn't put in that effort because I already made my big hobby a profession, and that was a ride. And I'm not going to lie, it does take away a lot of joy from it. I didn't want to do that again. I had so much fun doing stand-up comedy. Now things are changing. I did my first ever paid corporate gig now in November only. And when I go back to Shanghai, I have a few things lined up. But I thought I would be a fantastic stand-up comedian because of my clowning. I wasn't. Whenever I tried some clown-related stuff as a stand-up comedian, it was a complete mess. What happened, though, is I noticed stand-up comedy made me a much better clown. Because in stand-up comedy, you have these methods for sorting your material and make the transition between the jokes and what's the setup, what's the punchline, what's the tag. And to me, my style of clowning, it turned out that this toolbox was very, very useful.
So I just had a perspective to this that, I was discussing with Bashob earlier, and the stand-up comedy is very audio experience. You can listen to it even on a radio and stuff like that and still laugh. But clowning is very visual.
Yes.
So I think when a lot of us go in for a stand-up comedy program or a open mic or whatever, I think we shut off our eyes and we just want to listen. So even if we would sleep and then see, listen to it, we would laugh. So maybe that's, just saying, maybe that's what happens when you do stand-up comedy and then try and mix clowning with that so people don't react. But yeah, I think you have a lot of experiences. You've also worked, you have immense experience working with societies and places which we probably would never even experience. So I think I'll hand it over to Bashob to dig deeper into that.
I just want to comment on that because I think you're 100% right. I teach clowning also, which is great because, clowning is a lot about making mistakes, right? I had grown-up people crying in my clown workshop saying, this is the first time in my life that I'm allowed to make a mistake. But I always say in my clown workshops that when I hear a stand-up comedy joke, I can analyze and say exactly what made me laugh. When I see a clown show, I never knew why I was laughing. Even when I perform, I can never say afterwards what made them laugh. So to me, stand-up comedy is a very intellectual art form, which is great. Clowning is something else, which is also great. There's no better or worse here. It's just different on that.
So just before we go to you, have you considered acting on like a movie or like a Hollywood star thing. I mean, I don't know what it's called in Sweden, but the movie industry, have you ever considered that? Has that been an option?
I want to. I love movie acting. When I was in theater schools, it was a film that was also a film school. So I got to do a short film almost every weekend. I love that. I hope that happens to me one day or the other. It's just, I choose to live in my small hometown, starting my own theater company instead of taking the train to Stockholm to run for auditions. So I choose another path. But this is something I wish it would have happened in my life. I choose something else, but I hope it's not too late. Are you okay?
Yeah.
We had a break. We're back with napkins on our laps because some touching stories.
I am actually trying to catch hold of the end that I want to start with. Do I deep dive into Nigeria, Kamathipura? But just taking off from Rajesh, you've performed or been relevant in your field of work, whether it is clowning or writing script or theater or direction or whatever performing arts you've done in multiple countries. You worked in multiple countries with multiple nationalities, with multiple influences. And you yourself are multi-talented. So where all have you worked, and what have your experiences been?
Well, I obviously started out in Sweden, and I do consider China my second home. This is my 10th time in India, and some of the experience that formed me most as a person happened in India. So I told Svatika, our common friend who was here doing an amazing episode with you guys, I told her India is like my third home, and she got very offended. Yes, third home sounds really bad, but
I would have strategized about that, but yeah, go for it.
I don't think she was offended for me. Anyway, so these are my three main, but with Clowns Without Borders, I traveled to Nepal, and it was amazing. We went to Nepal to visit the places where those women came from and organizations working in the area. Greece, where we were in refugee camps meeting the people who came over Mediterranean, and that was in a way more even darker than Kamathipura. And I went to Poland to perform for refugees from Ukraine. Tunisia, where a friend of mine, Anneli Deval, is running an amazing project. Try to remember. Me and Rupert also went to USA. I told you about that. I've been in London.
Continent by continent. Where all in Europe have you played? Everywhere.
Everywhere. I went to France, playing for British tourists in a camping lot. But that was my sister lived in France, arranged that one. I've been to Macedonia. North Macedonia is called now. When I was in school, it was a school project.
The same place that Alexandra came from?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Me and Rupert went to Italy and Prague and Amsterdam for fringe festivals. I know that there are more Clowns Without Borders journeys there, but we mentioned Nigeria.
And in the African subcontinent,
to Tunisia and Nigeria.
Nigeria.
Yes.
Right. You've okay.
No, I've not been to South America. I think I would love to.
People. Yeah, and in the North American subcontinent?
North America only.
Canada?
Not Canada.
What about everything to do with England and its neighbors?
I've been in London. There's an independent company there called Border Crossings. That it was actually in a project with them that I met Svatika, and I first went to Shanghai and I fell in love with that city. So that's also a story. And I went back there a few times to work with them. Yeah.
What about when you were training for kickboxing in Thailand?
Oh, yeah. I mean, why should we talk about that? I was there as a tourist. But I do want to. I do have a dream to perform in orphanages in Thailand. So I'm working on that, but I'll come back in a couple of years and tell you how it went.
What about the Aussies and the Kiwis?
Nope, not yet.
No, the kangaroos haven't called you yet.
But you see, I know it's a thing now on Bumble, whatever. People like, I've been to 50 plus countries. I haven't. It's just I've had a very intense experience in the places that I went to.
I think being to 50 different countries as a tourist is very different from being to even 10 countries like the way you have done. So,
Yeah, don't get me started on these 50 plus countries and counting, yada yada people.
that's just like doing hop from one country to the other just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. So what's the point, really?
But the experience that you have and that you have gathered the memories out of from all the places that you visited are probably way more priceless than anybody spending money to just visit a country for the sake of doing it.
I mean, I'm not competing, but it's also like a few times I've had the chance to, stay back a couple of days and just experience the country. And I mean, since I had the privilege to tour with Rupesh in India, for example, we went to Dehradun, where Rupesh, old theater teacher, Alok Ulfat, has his center, and we had half a day off and we walked up in the mountains and saw the Himalayas. Like, this kind of experience I'm very privileged to have. But I mean, mostly, like, for example, when we went to Lesbos, it was like hotel, get into the car, perform, cry in the car, perform, cry in the car, eat, sleep. So you don't get to see much, and what you see are things you want to forget. So it's different. It's different.
Tell me something. I mean, yes, there's a lot of intensity and in some sense darkness to your Bombay experience. That took you to Nepal as well. I gather that even Nigeria and Greece were intense in some way.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to talk about them?
I sure can. So the thing with the darkness, I mean, you also mentioned before that you haven't been exposed to. Neither have I. I only see the light. I only see these amazing people arranging these things and the children laughing. And then I hear about the darkness. And of course, sometimes, like, for example, in Tunisia, I gave a workshop to a bunch of like kids in their maybe between 10 and 14 who, I mean, living on the street and grew up on the street, and they all do glue, like they sniff it. Yeah. And you look them in the eyes and they are not there. You try to establish contact, they're not there. You play games. If they engage for 3 seconds, you're happy. So, of course, then you see the darkness. But mostly that's so interesting. Like in 2015, Sweden accepted a lot of refugees who came from the war in Syria. And there were all these charity organizations asking for money to help these children. So like the subway stations, everything, they were covered by these pictures of children suffering, pictures of children on these rafts. And I've seen these rafts, and I will never be able to wash that out of my brain, that sight. But I think there is something wrong about that. These children are suffering, help them. Yes, of course, that's the compassion we want to trigger, but there's also something dehumanizing about it. Oh, these poor children, oh, these suffering children. I understand why. I will never be able to understand this right-wing extremist saying, go back home and all these things, but I understand the dynamics, how that trigger, because it does something to see these pictures. It triggers defense reactions. I also go like, I don't want this. Don't come here. Don't come here. But if you get to see what I've seen, if you get to see these children smiling, laughing, and if you see in their mothers, like when we were in Lesbos, here it comes. When we were in Lesbos, this was December 2015. It was cold as hell. And the Mediterranean was cold as hell. And you have these rafts, they are designed to carry like 12 people, but they're loaded with 50 people. So this boat ride from Turkey to this island, Lesbos, is supposed to take 2 hours, but it takes 12 hours because the rafts are so overloaded. And you see these people like holding onto the raft, hanging over there. You know that some people fell into the ocean. You know these children who come, they witness people drown in front of their eyes. There was this one day at Lesbos. So all the charity workers, they were there. They had this app. Now there's a raft coming to this beach. Go there. And this app also showed the weather. And one of the nights, it was such a stormy night. And you could feel like we were we were busking for audience. We walked from tent to tent saying, we have a clown show soon. Everyone spoke English because the one who managed to get out of Syria was the highly educated. So they all spoke English. There were doctors. There were all these kind of people there. And we did a show and this guy comes up. I haven't thought about this guy. He just came back now. Obviously, he wants to be in this podcast. He came up to us and started talking to us. And he showed his arm was in a bandage. And he said, I was a magician. He spoke to us in Swedish. He was a magician. He was a touring magician. He had visited Sweden and he did shows in Sweden. And he said, if I could, I would have been in your show. But now my hand, I can't. And he said, I'll try to watch your show, but maybe it'll be too heartbreaking for me that I can't be in it. And then he told us the story about his hand. And he said, so his raft had flipped over and he could swim, but many people couldn't. So they held on to him, and it was this one guy who held on to him. And to survive himself, he had to punch this guy in the face until he let go. And that's why he broke his hand. And that's why he couldn't be in the show. And that day, so all these kids would grab us. Like we came there as clowns, like there's a show and the kids would grab us. But that day after that stormy night, we felt they grabbed us in another way. I could felt death in their very hands. And you're walking around with your red nose like, I mean, it's quite. But apart from that, I mean, mostly we only see light. And I think that's why I keep doing that, because, it's such a cliche, but when there is darkness, people step in being the light. And to me, it's such a privilege these people spend their lives doing this. They do this every day for decades. I go there and I spend maximum 2 weeks. In that sense, I'm a tourist, but it feels like such a privilege to, even for 30 minutes, you get to be that light. And we all experience it sometimes. I guess most of us are someone's light. We're the light in someone's life. But that's what we all want, right? I'm just as big of an asshole as everybody else. There are people that I hurt. There are people I treated badly, but at least through my job, I get these 30 minutes now and then. So one more thing I really want to tell you about Lesbos is, so we were told to, whatever you do, don't go into the water, which sounds like a weird thing to say. But when you're there and you see the rafts coming and you see the children, all you ever want to do is just run into the water and help. But we were very strictly told that whatever you do, don't do that. There are other people there doing that. Your job is, once they're safe, once they're warm, make them laugh. And it's so amazing. Like, I forgot to tell you before, but I talk a lot about the children, but also the mothers. So what happened in Lesbos was that the men were mostly back in Syria, the mothers and children came. And when you see a mother who, like 20 hours earlier, she makes the decision, putting her children on a raft, knowing that they might not survive. I mean, children are children. They forget it. Stays in the system at some place, but they forget. It's the next moment, right? But so you could see the children started to play, but the mothers were still traumatized. When the mothers saw the children laugh, and several of them, they started singing. They started doing, I can't do it, but this, that kind of singing. Hope that didn't came out weird. They started singing and dancing uncontrolled out of pure happiness. Also one of these sights that I'll never forget. But so we saw one of these rafts coming in. We were staying on a distance watching. And then we see surfers just running into this water, taking care of the rafts. And we heard that this was a bunch of surfers from Australia who just heard that, okay, this is the situation in Lesbos. Rafts are coming in, the water is cold, might be stormy, and they were like, we have all the equipments and we have all the experience. We are needed here. Who would ever have thought that a bunch of, I have all these biases against surfer guys from Australia, right? They were exactly the people needed. And people, many times I hear people say, oh, I want to do something like you do, but I'm not a clown. I'm whatever. I do marketing, or I do I do paperwork. I was like, that's exactly what I need. That's exactly what we need. I can't do paperwork. If you do the administration for these things, I mean, now Clowns Without Borders Sweden is a very strong organization with an office, but that hasn't always been the case. And I want to start up a Clowns Without Borders China. Whatever you have in your pocket, there's someone out there who needs it. And I love to talk about these surfers because to me, it's just bizarre and genius. And God knows how many lives these surfers saved.
I want to go to this aspect of you where, see, I'm certain as I hear it as well, you receiving these kids, people, mothers, people who've left everything that they knew, their identities behind, just to be able to live, right? And have undertaken a journey, which itself is extremely traumatizing, knowing fairly well that they may not make it to the other side. To receive them and to make them laugh I can't fathom that. It's probably very, very difficult. But trying to kind of understand where you come from, the aspect of imparting joy, if I may say that as a layman, to when these people are coming with that bent of mind and those set of emotions. They're all complex emotions. They're all heavy emotions. Like the story about the mother and the kid that you mentioned, that the mother's joy is the fact that the kid survived and you were able to make the kids laugh.
Yeah.
So it suddenly makes me look at your profession very, very differently. I want to ask, what are you going through then?
At that moment.
Yeah, because it seems too many things. I mean, you want to run there, save them, but there are surfers. These guys come in and you're supposed to make them laugh. They are coming in hungry, disoriented, drained, dehydrated, with aches and pains and emotions all over. How do you penetrate that to make them laugh?
So it's again this sacred room. And you can only be here and now, right? Here and now, those 12 hours on the raft doesn't exist. The minute I look them in the eyes and I do all my stumbling on my feet, falling on my ass, silly jokes, that's the only thing that exists. It's a very intensive now. This is how it works for me. Then, on Lesbos, I cried every car ride between the shows because that's when you digest it. But now we're talking.
Right.
There's only me trying to communicate these memories to you. I don't even, I'm looking straight to you. On my left side is Rajesh. He doesn't really exist to me. Now I'm looking at him. Now he exists again. But that's how it works. There's only here and now. Yeah. And we have this thing also in Clowns Without Borders. When we come back from a journey, we have talks with professionals who help us deal with all this. So of course, there's a lot of things to deal with, but it's just here and now.
As well.
Yeah.
I'll come to the fact that you're going through a ton there. We've established that. They're going through a ton there. So how you behave, you get down to action. That's you've dropped everything that needs processing. You've put it inside a box, kept it later, and your car rides, or probably what Rajesh said, those are the times you'll process it. Processing is not on, it's action time, right? I get that. The other aspect of what you are doing is it's deeply personal yet impersonal.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. I just want to add, so it's not like I shut down something. It's not like I put it in a box. Like if I get angry with my boss, but I know I can't say what I want to say to that boss because then I get fired. That's putting it in a box.
Right.
But here, no, I never shut anything out.
Right.
It's so silly, but I just look them in the eyes.
A quick question. Is being silly an icebreaker of difficult times?
I have no idea, but it sure works for me. Yeah.
I'm just, because in some sense, you don't need to process that. It's so simply served as an expression, right?
And it's so pure. It's so basic. To me, it's like singing. Like theater, in a way, is a very, how to say, levitated art form. Like theater as we know it today, you need stage light, you need these special rooms that has these special rules, and like it's very. Artificial is not the right word at all, but yeah, it's
nuanced.
Yeah, maybe you could, but singing, it comes naturally. It's so pure. Who invented singing? We will never have an answer to that. Who invented naturalist theater? We can say a name in a year. to me, clowning is the same. I mean, there are all these studies, even monkeys do jokes with each other. Like, who invented joking? We don't know.
Quickly on this topic again, with all of these experiences going into you, I mean, you going through all of this, don't you feel angry? It's a yes or a no answer.
Furious.
How do you process that?
Cry. It's simple as that. I mean, when I was in Lesbos, this was in 2015, before we had far-right parties in every government in Europe. The Swedish far-right party, who was at that time in the these terms, in the Congress, but not in the Parliament. They're not in the Parliament yet. It won't happen. Anyway, at that time, I was walking the beaches of Lesbos, and I saw piles of life vests from children. And you look at thousands and thousands of life vests and tiny shoes, and for every damn life vest, you think, I hope this one kid survive. That's what I think. At the same time, there were members of the far right-wing party of Sweden walking the same beaches, handing out flyers saying, Sweden is full, you're not welcome. What's going on in those people's brains? You see, maybe you can't hear it, but my eyes are waterfalls now as I speak about this,
Right.
and it's anger. No, I don't know how to deal with this anger in other ways than just crying. I don't. But I also remember, and I talk about this in my Frankenstein show, that in Kamathipura, so I also got in contact with something inside of me that I never thought I would. I mean, you hear the stories. I'm getting napkins here. Thank you. That's the sound of me wiping my eyes. I mean, when we heard about these stories about what's happening to these children, and I think about, because I mean, we've been driving the street to that daycare center, and Rupert told me, look straight forward, close the window, lock the doors, hide your wallet, all these things. And you see guys standing in the door, like in the gates, and you're thinking, these are probably the pimps. These might be the guys who went to Nepal to pick these children. I saw myself. I was thinking, if I had one of these guys in front of me now, I would just hit him and hit him and hit him until a point where there's nothing left there to hit. Like, never in my life did I think that I would feel it in my body, the urge to actually physically kill another person. And I don't believe in killing. I'm very much against capital punishment, all these things. But these are logical reasons, the emotions. So yeah, but again, I mean, on a very, very weird level, this is also a healing process. Back to Jung, right? You have to confront your shadow. But yeah, the anger is a thing for sure.
Connecting the dots back to, I feel your anger, because while I was hearing your story, I wasn't there, but a part of me is angry, right? Thanks. I'm carrying one. That being said, of course, it tends to come out on faces that we can put or attribute to. When we go back to Bombay, it also seems like a social systematic concern. Going back to your profession.
And that's the monster. I just want to... The monster is the system that we created. We put all our evil somewhere else, but it still exists. It's the Frankenstein again. I'm doing good. Oh, I created a monster. And then the monster have to carry all this. Yeah, I mean, again, you hit the head of the nail. I just needed to point it out.
What I'm wondering is theater or performing arts as a field of work. As I hear from you, the thing that becomes very clear is, in some sense, you've used your art form, your profession, to be able to touch or relieve lives of whatever pain you could, almost as an undertaking. The other side I feel, and it's the way I'm thinking, you can correct me, is the fact that humor, expressions of humor is probably two things for you. One is you let your expression out as well, which is probably why you distinguish the jester and the clown very, very, in a very nuanced way. But performing arts as a field of work also, how does, I mean, your personal bit is very clear. How do you think the whole genre of it can alleviate misery overall? I mean, I'm speaking to you here as a representative of a certain profession.
Can you please repeat
Yes.
the actual question?
The question is, how in your profession, in the multiple roles that you play, performing arts is probably the bigger umbrella. And within that, there are different, there is a clown, there's a theater persona, there's a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
They're all different mediums in which performing art takes shape. In each of these, how does one alleviate human misery? How does one, the other side of the question would be, do you think a person who feels strongly for another fellow human being is able to feel their pain, should undertake performing arts? If yes, how would you recommend he goes about it? There are two big questions.
Yeah, I think that whether one who feels in a certain way or whose psyche works in a certain way or ever should or should not do something, that's, in my world, there's no should or should not. I know that you and Spatika had a very interesting discussion about what is art, and I know we were talking about like the art of making certain, I think you talked about pottery or something. And to me, it's like really whatever makes you feel good. There is this, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's this book called The Course in Miracles. And there's this wonderful quote there saying, there is no difference between God's will with you in the world and your own will. For being a non-religious person, I keep referring to God a lot.
Yeah,
but
I was just noticing
God as
that.
an organizing system. Can we agree on that? Whatever. Okay, I had, when I was a kid, I read Michael Jackson's autobiography, and he's talk about, I'm saving the world. He's a problematic character, but let's not go there. Anyway, I did grow up with a lot of ideas about art being able to save the world. And they do come, maybe not from Michael Jackson, but via Michael Jackson. I mean, he was playing that stereotype for sure. I guess he was pure about it as well. That's another story. I did have these things in my mind, but stronger than that, I just did what's fun. Really, I don't know this urge in me to entertain and all. We probably come back to that when we come to your question about the therapy. But and I think if there's one thing I believe in life is that your heart tells you what to do. Your heart tells you what path to walk to heal your wounds, to give to the world whatever you're here to give. If your heart tells you should do art, not because there's a need, I have to do it, I have to be seen, but because it tickles your heart, it makes you smile, do it. And we live in a society that's obsessed with planning your steps, what's the path to success, measure things. I don't think life works like that. You do what tickles your heart, and it will lead you to the place where you're supposed to be. Never did I. Okay, here's a confession. I love India now. The first 3 times I visited India, I couldn't stand it. My friends were begging me, don't go to India again. You come back and you're a mess. It took me some time. Never did I ever think that going to India, being a clown, would be my path of life. But I just did what, tickled my heart. And I actually believe that answers both of your questions. Again, Salieri's quote, art is the only thing that makes life understandable to me. If I need to take all these things that I don't understand and alleviate it, did I alleviate? Swedish English. Alleviate it to a very artistic form when I can grasp it. Okay, then maybe I deal with my existential crisis by reading Hamlet. If I can just live it and feel it and cry it and dance it or whatever I need to do, go to Thailand and hit a punching bag I'll tell you a story about that. If that's my way of dealing with it, not even putting words on it, so be it.
Right.
I have to tell you this Thailand story
Yes,
because I actually
please.
think it answers your question. Several times I went to yoga retreats, which was amazing in many ways. I didn't sleep well at those retreats. And I think there's too much of meditation, too much om, too much namaste, too introverted for me where I am in my life right now. And I was like, why am I not getting peace of mind? This year I went to Thailand. I spent 2 weeks hitting a punching bag. I slept like a baby. I never slept that good for decades. I'm not making this up.
Right.
Maybe that's my art right here, right now. But I never planned this. I was like, oh, this sounds like fun.
So, coming back to my question on therapy, I mean, did you ever feel the need for therapy? I don't know whether you go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, but yeah, therapy is an easy word to work with.
So here's the story. The first time I myself went to see a therapist, I was 19 years old. And now that is not a big thing, at least not in Sweden. A lot of young people see therapists. But when I was 19 years old, this was a huge thing. Like none of my friends have heard about anything like that. The therapist was also like, wow, this is so unique that such a young person comes. So the thing is that since I was young, it's been a natural thing for me to go to therapy to deal with other things. I guess that's another story. But I never had a specific need to deal with, to specifically go to a therapist and talk about what I experienced on these tours. I'm trying to think here if it even came up in any talks like, oh, this happened and I need to deal with it. I can't remember. No, because I mean, this is horrible, but it's also cathartic.
Cathartic.
Yeah, there's a T there. Cathartic. So actually, no, because it's also pure. Like you go to this is how I perceive it. You go to therapy when something is locked, is stuck. You need to have a big talk and then be able to cry. This is an easy cry. These things they just come out.
Did you end up working in these spaces by default, or was it a choice, or was it a result of your social science study?
It was totally not the result of my social science studies for sure, or maybe, or whatever. But I want to say, so it's again, I mean, what we see in the news is the wars. I never been to war. I mean, Nigeria was a very militarized zone, and they were checking our cars if someone placed a bomb underneath it every evening, and that was weird. But I see like the secondhand results. In Poland, I performed for children who have been deported from orphanages in Ukraine. But colleagues of mine went to Ukraine, and during one show, they had to actually stop the show and hide in a bomb shelter. I volunteered for that tour, but it didn't work out. So in a way, I haven't experienced it. And in a way, I did. But the thing is, we all did. Everyone in Sweden who met a migrant from Syria have experienced what I did. Only that they do it, with other filters. And I think that's also one thing why I never felt a need to see a therapist to talk about this. It's there. It exists in the world. If you start talking to someone who's been to Lesbos, you get to see what I see, just through a different filter. But what's not shown on the news is the light. Never do you ever put on the news and see a mother crying, laughing, dancing out of pure joy. That's the one thing I've seen that is not on the news because it doesn't fit the narrative. I'm not into conspiracies in that sense, but there is a narrative that keeps us terrified, that keeps us consuming, that keeps us feeding this monster that we talked about before. I'm not saying all the news are a part of a global conspiracy. I really don't. But there is a narrative here that needs other nuances. Who is out there telling us it's hopeless, it's worthless? All these seeds that we try to plant that can actually bring hope. Who is deciding that they get less media attention? Who is gaining for this? I think that's a question you can ask and should ask. And you can ask it without going into some woo-woo land where there are evil forces in the universe or lizards controlling the world.
Why isn't the world not doing anything about this? There is so much. And since you have been there and experienced it, how can anybody even be in that space to help in any way?
Let me rephrase that question. How come most part of the world don't know about all these people who are doing something about it? Clowns Without Borders is a tiny organization. We usually collaborate with these huge organizations. Like in Lesbos, we were in the tents of Save the Children and Action Aid and UNESCO and sorry for the ones that I can't think of right now. There are so many people wanting to do good and doing good. Why do they keep telling us it's hopeless? And it's also like, I know I can't remember the title of that book, but some economist writing about the economy of charity. If you're a doctor who makes a lot of money, don't work with Doctors Without Borders. Don't go there and spend several months not making that money. Stay at home, make your money, donate it to Doctors Without Borders. And they can send 10 doctors for that money. There's if you have a proper salary, which I never had in my entire life, I'm 42 years old, you can set aside whatever, 1 lakh rupees per month. And it saves, I don't know how many lives, lots of lives. I don't know how many thousand children I could reach per year for that money. I'm not saying you have to do it. We all live in our own reality. I'm whining about not having a job. Yeah, I do have a job, just not full-time all year. But that's Swedish measurements. I'm so privileged compared to, I could totally set aside much more money than I do. We all live in our own reality. But we can also, all of us can question our privileges. Today, just a few days ago, I was in fear and all of my friends were in fear because yet another populist leader had been installed to a very powerful position in the world. And we keep asking ourselves, how can this happen? How can this populist person become the president of a democratic country? What we don't realize is we're asking these questions from a very privileged position. The whole global liberal project, which I support, it's an elite project. I'm so privileged that I can see the immediate benefits from it and the long-term benefits from it. But if you don't have my privileges, you don't see it. And I think the only way that we can ever have another kind of world is that those of us who have privileges, we need to at least depict our privileges and then ask, what privileges can I sustain from? And we have to do that without judgment. I don't know you. I never walked in your shoes. If you say, I need every single rupee I make to buy a fancy car, who am I to judge? I tried several times to be a vegan because I don't like what's going on in the meat industry. I failed. I eat meat every day because it took so much energy from me to stop eating meat that I felt there were other things that I can't do that I think it's good that I do. And I don't accept being judged for that. We can't judge other people. We can't judge ourselves. It's not about like this. It's so easy to say it's your responsibility to donate that much, whatever. Why do we talk about responsibilities? We can talk about possibilities. I do have the possibility to spend several months every year without a salary and do this instead. And the reason why I have this possibility is because I come from a country with very strong social nets. I have parents helping me. God bless them. But it's also because I just happen to become this person who think the best I can ever do in life is to stumble on my ass, make a kid laugh, and I'm happy for a week. So it's you can't measure this.
Right.
You can't. I love these theories of intersectionality. I think it's very useful. I think went bananas into some whatever, but the theory is still very strong, but it doesn't answer all the questions. There's something beyond that, and I think that we need to start talking about what's beyond. In Sweden, you can't, because then it's either religion or hippie woo whatever, but we need to find a language to talk about these things, because then we access these possibilities, these unique possibilities that each and every one of us carry. Whoa, where did that come from? Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll end it here. Thank you, Björn.
Thank you.
This has been absolutely surreal for me, because it's the first time I'm seeing so many men in tears.
You need to play more football.
So yeah, thank you. And this is probably a unique experience, because we thought, at least I thought, that there'll be a lot more laughter in this room.
I apologize. I'm the shittiest clown ever.
But this was like an amazing conversation, and I would definitely love to listen to a lot more of your experiences, because it makes me a lot more human that way. And since I have not been exposed to something like this, it also gives me a reality check for myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will hug you after this. But yes, what I'm grateful for, like Rajesh, I had expected this to be a superfluous, funny conversation, anecdotally, with a lot of humor, wit, and all of that, which we had as well. But overall, I see a clown persona. It comes from a very, at least to me, it comes from a very intense place, coated with humor and wit. But there's a lot more inside. The undercurrents are really strong, and I feel that it changes my view on people who make me laugh or make me smile. It so seems that it needs a lot more intensity and pain within to be that person. That's the shift of opinion that you seem to.
Well, I hear that a lot. Clowns.Border Sweden has like 150 artists. Not everyone are like this. There are those. This is my take on it. It's not the general truth.
But really appreciate this. It's a good dive for me, this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank
Just
you.
before we close, I'd also like to request if you could send out to us later the list of all the organizations that you think are helping out people in these kind of situations. We would definitely love to put it in the in the description of the podcast, so that people can reach out and help in any way possible, be it donations, be it physically present, or going out and helping
Just
the
connecting.
way you do,
Yeah.
just the way they want to. So we'll leave it to them.
The one thing I would like then, Clowns Without India is a real organization. You can donate everything, and I know it will end up in a good place.
Thank you so much, and all the best for the book. We look forward to
that's
coming out someday.
Yes.
And
It'll happen.
I'm sure it will be a heartwarming and heart-touching book. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, guys.